We ask, what is your best true spooky story? I lived in an old apartment in 2002. The place was built in 1900, so it was just over 100 years old when I moved in. The living room and kitchen were fine, but the bathroom and bedroom were unnerving. I just always felt like I was being watched, especially in the bedroom if the closet door was open. Those unnerving feelings just became moderately uncomfortable as I settled in. I felt safe in the bedroom, but only if the door was locked. One night, I was dead asleep when there was a loud bang on my bedroom door. When I got up the courage to get out of bed, I checked the apartment and all the windows were closed and locked from the inside. The door still had the chain secured and no one was in there. I mentioned the closet in the bedroom. I never liked going in there, and I never liked if the door was open. For some reason in my head, I would hear gasping noises, so for that reason the closet stayed closed. A month or more after I was awoken to the bang on my door, I was dead asleep, but something woke me up, and it was a pressure on me like I'm being held down. It was pitch black in my room and I could not see a thing, but I knew someone was standing over me. When I could finally turn out a bedside lamp, nobody was there. After then, I could not sleep in the dark. I had to sleep with a nightlight on. The incident scared the life out of me, and after that unnerving feeling of being watched intensified, friends would come over and comment about being uncomfortable in the bathroom, like they're being watched. It became so uncomfortable for me that when I had the chance to move to another unit, I jumped at it. I packed up and got the hell out. After me, several people rented that apartment, and they would move out within months. I became friendly with the building manager and told him that I felt the place was haunted. He kind of laughed it off. Years after, they were renovating the place and the building manager was doing some painting there. And the building owner was there too. I went and checked out the apartment and it did look nicer. It did not feel as creepy. I got to talking with the building owner, and though the course of the conversation, he just throws it out there that a former tenant committed suicide in that closet by hanging themselves. He also mentioned that the original designer of the building lived in that apartment and died there. I wasn't mad when I heard that, but felt validated that what I experienced was indeed real. When my grandparents bought their house for a family of 10, my grandpa found a fake wall upstairs. He tore it down to make room for the family. Behind the wall were children's clothes and play toys, almost as if they walked out of the room in a hurry. My mom told me stories of sitting in her room and something circling the walls around her, sounding like wallpaper being torn. When she moved out, my aunt moved into the same room. She would wake up with pictures she hung laying on her chest in the morning. My cousins also have stories of hearing footsteps coming up the stairs and stopping outside their door in the middle of the night. I still don't go upstairs to their house because it's always cold, and I get weird vibes up there. Even in my adult life, I have scary dreams that take place in their upstairs. Midnight Monster here. If you guys are enjoying these creepy stories so far, just know Midnight Monster is dropping daily videos, so subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video. Okay, back to story 3. While at university, my friends and I ran out of beer. Hardly any shops were open because it was late, so the only option was to walk a mile or so to the nearest 24-hour supermarket. Between the supermarket and the dorms we lived in was just row after row of suburban houses which all looked the same. As we were walking down one road, we passed a field with a large campfire and some people riding horses around it. There were people playing musical instruments and general sounds of a good time happening. The horses and fire and the lanterns, which were dotted about, gave it a very old-fashioned feel. Maybe 5 minutes after passing the field, now walking past houses again, one of my friends commented on how weird and out of place that gathering of people had been. My other friend and I have been thinking exactly the same thing, so, curious, we turned around and walked back to find out exactly what was going on. There was nothing there. Not just no people or horses, there was no field. just more and more houses. Even though we were absolutely certain we were on the right road, as we'd simply just turned around, we walked up and down the neighboring roads too, finding nothing. We weren't drunk, though. We'd had some drinks, so I've got absolutely no idea what happened that night. 4 years ago, I lived in a very large farmhouse that was converted into 2 apartments. The house was known as the Old Boys' Home. It was used to house boys with behavioral issues, but was closed due to allegations of molestation. Anyways, I was living with my boyfriend and 3-year-old daughter at the time. My bedroom had a large fireplace that had been boarded up and painted over. I decided to push my bed up against it one day while I was rearranging things. It was like a headboard. That night, around 1 a.m., I heard a small voice saying, "Mom! Mom! Mommy!" I had sat up in bed but did not see anything, so I reached over to my boyfriend, trying to grab down and grab my daughter and put her in our bed. I kept feeling around and I was still hearing the voice, but I could not feel her. My boyfriend woke up and turned the bedside lamp on, asking me, "What the hell are you doing?" I explained that Amelia was trying to get out in our bed and I was reaching for her. There was no one there. My daughter was sound asleep in her room. Then the next night came. Around 1 a.m. again, my dog started to whimper outside, so my boyfriend got up to take him outside. You know that feeling in a bed when someone lies down next to you, where the bed pushes in and there's a warmth in your back? I felt that, so I assumed my boyfriend had come back to bed. I rolled over. My boyfriend was not in that bed, and I felt the fucking bed release pressure. Whatever was lying next to me has gotten up in that second. I moved my bed the next day to the other side of the room, and I never had another incident in the 2 years I remained in that home. My wife and I stayed at a nice hotel in downtown Pittsburgh. It was where I asked her to marry me after a lavish meal. I picked the room because it came with a huge Japanese soaking tub that I, a 6'1" man, could barely see the edge of. Anyways, the first night we stayed there, we were sleeping in a single king bed. I believe the alarm clock said it was 2 or 3 a.m. To my left, and just a few feet from me, I heard the sound of what seemed like a pencil slowly rolling down a sloped surface. It was so deliberate and loud that it woke us both up. It was also so deliberate that while my heart pumped in my chest from the sudden noise, I quickly convinced myself that it was a pencil sliding off my desk in our room, and I went back to sleep. The next morning, to my surprise, I found that A, there was no pencils in the room. B, there was no desk. It was my first night in the room, so I assumed that, like other hotels, it had a place to sit and write. Well, that was not the case. The only thing I could find to write with this ballpoint pen with caps on. They would not make that distinctive loud noise that a rigid wooden pencil makes as it rolls. Furthermore, there was no sloped surface in the room for anything to suddenly roll off of in the middle of the night. The whole thing was weird enough for us to talk about it that morning. I do not believe in ghosts, but to be honest, I'd love to encounter something unexplained. I entertained the idea of a ghost pencil, but knew in my head it had no explanation grounded at all. But that's not all that happened. That night we were both soaking in the tub. The water was up to my chin and it was great. We were in the middle of February and a cold, miserable month in Pittsburgh. We were sloshing around in the tub, having a blast, pretending we were rich. And then, from the other room, we heard the buzzing of an old microphone hooked up to a PA system. Basically, that sound of feedback precedes an announcement. The whole room was filled with the buzzing sound of microphone feedback. Our hearts thumped in our chest yet again, and then we both practically jumped out of our own skin. We heard the very distinctive sound of someone blowing into a microphone to test it. You could see it in your head, it was so distinctive, just like that damn pencil. My heart went from thumping wildly to thrumming like a hummingbird's naked. I leapt from the tub and threw a towel around myself. "That was a man blowing into a microphone," I said. My wife stayed in the tub, scared and quiet. I searched our room and did not find a speaker or any kind of speaker grill embedded into a wall or ceiling. We could not for the life of us find a potential source for the sound other than an iHome speaker that was already playing music from my iPhones. So that was our story. We still had one more night. We were exhilarated by our engagement and the ghost and the haunt of the hotel. A week later, I had the thought to email the hotel. I asked them about their building. Pittsburgh is an old town, and downtown Pittsburgh is a very, very old town. They got back to me and explained, as my jaw dropped to the floor, that they used to be an old telephone factory. I did not know why I found meaning in that explanation or why it made everything click so well. But my thoughts immediately went to the sounds of a factory, the PA system, the drafting table, all relics from another time in that building's life. For about 10 years now, my Nana has been living in a nursing home. She had a stroke and mentally she's not all there. She still recognizes us when we visit and gets happy to see us, but she often talks gibberish, thinking she's in a distant memory of the past. It makes me sad because she and I have always been close connecting growing up. My parents both worked a lot and she would stay with me. She used to know when I was lying. She could always sense when I was sick, even when she wasn't over. And she and I have eerily similar both in personalities and looks. There are pictures of her when she was 21, and it could be me in that picture. We were very close growing up and I love her dearly. I introduced her to my now husband when we started dating in college. He's from a different country than me, and I live in his country. So, we've been dating for a few years when my visa was going to expire. In order for us to live in one place, we decided to get married. However, we were still young, fresh out of university, and decided to just elope. We decided to get officially married at a courthouse while announcing our engagement and then have a wedding a few years later. Official documents and wedding ceremonies are separated into my husband's country anyways. No one knew of our plan. We were, and are still, stupidly in love and thrilled to have such a crazy secret between us two. In hindsight, it was stupid and no one would have judged us, especially considering we're still happily together years later. But we still decided to hide it because we were stupid kids. So, we flew to visit my parents in my home country and announce our engagement, and my dad picks us up from the airport. We were chatting in the car when he tells us that my Nana was freaking out while he visited her the other day. The day we decided to elope. Why was she freaking out? She announced to my whole family that she saw in her dreams that I eloped and was now married. They dismissed her because they did not expect that at all. She kept insisting and was incredibly lucid about it. She raised her voice when she hadn't done so since before the stroke. My dad had mentioned it because he thought it was sweet that she was so worried about this and became so lucid. My husband and I just got silent in the car and I went cold. We don't know how she knew or if it was just a coincidence, but she knew somehow. We went to visit her a few days later and she did not remember it at all. She was thrilled we were engaged. We are happily married now and had our wedding and stuff, and no one ever found out that we eloped before the wedding day. Except my Nana, apparently. I had just finished my initial military training, basic, AIT, and a few other classes, and got sent to my first duty station. My unit was at NTC for pre-development training, so I met up with the rear echelon. I get issued my room and spent 3 very disturbing days/nights in the barracks with weird stuff happening like gear not where I left it, locked drawers not being opened, the microwave turning on by itself, shit like that. My roommate, who I knew throughout training, showed up on our 4th day and I told him something along the lines of, "Watch your shit. Someone's been fucking with my new stuff and I don't know who." So the 4th night comes around, and my roommate secures our room and gear and goes to bed. Gotta be up at 05:30 for PT, so it's an early night. We lock all our stuff and go to bed. I wake up around 1 a.m. because my blankets fallen to the ground, and I was cold, which was weird because we were in the south in summer, so it's always hot. I hop down to get my blanket and I notice my armoire is open, and I open the lock, close it, and lock it, and get back to bed. I fell back asleep pretty easily, but I woke up again at about 2:30, and all my stuff and my roommate's stuff is now thrown around the room. I wake up my roommate and he's pissed because someone's fucking with us and can't figure out who it is. We clean it up and lock our stuff and go back to bed. I woke up a third time at 03:37 and was not alone. I can hear my roommate snoring, so I know it's not him. I sat up and saw someone in the little kitchenette area with the fridge open looking into it. I was freezing again. I was about to say something as the soldier turned around. My eyes had a moment to adjust to the bright light, and I started recognizing gear like the L-shaped flashlight on his shoulder, his Alice pick with magazine holders and canteens, boots and fatigues. This dude was combat ready. As my eyes reached his face, he turned a bit and I could see it. Half his head and helmet were gone, blown off by the looks of it. I'm scared shitless at this point. He closes the fridge, walks across the room, keeping his bright green eyes on, opened my front door and walked out. As he exited, he turned back around and said to me, "Be safe." I did not sleep the rest of the night. I did not wake my roommate up. I just sat up in bed for about 2 hours till I had to get ready for PT. 06:30 rolls around, so everyone's outside the barracks in formation, getting ready to start physical training. And the acting first sergeant says, "Hey, not Chase, you good? Looks like you seen a ghost." I replied, "Negative, I'm fine. 1SG, good to go." About halfway through PT, he comes up to me and asks me what's wrong because I'm visibly shaken up. I told him I was fine, just could not sleep last night. A few others asked if I was okay, and I just lied, saying I was good. I really wasn't, and they could see that, but they let me be. After PT ended, the acting 1SG pulled me to the side and told me to speak free, openly, and with all confidentiality, and off the record, what is wrong. I told him that if I told him what happened, he would think I'm batshit crazy. He assured me it was off the record and once again said, "Talk to me. You seriously look like you've seen a ghost, man." That got an awkward chuckle out of me, and I began to tell him my story, and when I got to the part about his head, the acting 1SG lost his shit. "Who the fuck put you up to this, man? This shit's not funny. Stop it, man." He smoked me for about 30 minutes, made me do push-ups, mountain climbers, stuff like that, all while yelling at me that I'm a piece of shit. Finally, after about 30 minutes of that, he says, "Look at me in my eyes and swear on everything that you love that you're not lying to me." I told him I was not lying. It fucking happened. So, he says to follow me, so I do. We get to the command office when I've been in, and they were obviously locked. He takes me behind 3 locked doors and 3 rooms I've never stepped foot in, and when he opens the last door, I saw it. It gave me chills. I still get chills from it. But plain as day, there's a soldier's portrait behind the commander's desk. I froze and said, "That's him." Acting 1SG, the guy who assigned me that room, told me who it was. He was a corporal in the unit on my unit's first deployment to Iraq, and he died of an IED attack that took off part of his head. I was the first soldier to be assigned to that room since it belonged to the deceased corporal. He forgave me and I forgave him, and he told me some stories about who this guy was. I deployed with that unit just a couple of months later and spent 12 months fighting in that shithole. I nearly died. I don't know how many times my vehicle got hit with IEDs and rockets, and it always makes me think of that corporal. I survived more things than most people can imagine, and I always felt like that corporal was keeping an eye out on me. Not everyone in my unit was as lucky as me, though. 3 from my company did not get to go home. Freshman year at my university, we had a creepy old dorm on campus that no one was living in. Everyone genuinely avoided it because it just had an uncomfortable feeling when you get close to it, and felt like you were being watched. There are rumored stories about it of 2 women dying there on a separate occasions, and they're the ones who would haunt the building. One night, a friend who was in a bad mood because his girlfriend had broken up with him. So, I was walking around campus with him to let him get things off his chest and trying to help him feel better. We walked past the dorm and I brought it up about it being haunted and was telling him the stories to try to take his mind off of it. So, the way the bottom floor was set up, there was 2 doors. Both sides of the building and the hallway that ran the entire length of the building, you could see the other door. We walked up to one of the windows and we were just looking down the hall when 2 girls walked out of a room wearing clothes that looked like they were from the 70s and stood there in the hall looking at each other, not speaking. Then, one girl slowly turned her head and looked straight at us, slowly turning her head back, then turned and walked the opposite direction down the hall. So we ran to the other side of the building. We could not find them. We came back to the original door and watched them do the same thing over again. We looked at each other and ran. This freaked me out for a while, especially after when I was sleeping in my dorm and all the posters fell off the wall at the exact same time. After telling this story to another friend, he convinced me to go back with him and try to find a way in. We found an open window, which we later found out was the room the girl hung herself in, and climbed in and started walking down the hall. We wandered around the building a bit and just started to notice generally creepy things. Water faucets that would start coming on. We'd walk through one room and then back through a chair would be moved. On the first floor, a desk turned upside down under the stairwell. As we were getting close to leaving, a lot more water faucets came on and kept getting louder and louder. Then we both got back to the room to go back out the window, and as we put our hands on the window, the door slammed closed. So we ripped the door open, drove out, and ran back to our dorm. And we never went back. I have a few stories that happened over the course of my life, but nothing freaked me out more than my younger brother one night when we were kids. I lived in an older house built in the early 80s, and there were some weird things that would happen. Objects and places we did not leave them. Voices, lights. Nothing particularly creepy though. Except after this. I have 2 brothers and we were all exactly 2 years apart. When I was young, roughly 9, my brothers are about 7 and 5 shared a room. Across the hall was my room. Our doorways looked at each other and I woke up late one night early morning as it was still dark to a methodic clicking sound. I could see my brother's light turning on, off, periodically and in succession. I wandered into the doorway and watched as my brother B sat in the top bunk, a look of horror on his drained-looking face with his little arm reaching down to click the light switch. I don't know how long I stood there, but soon, my mother was at my back, watching for a moment before scolding my brother for being up so late and playing with the light. He turned, dead-eyed to my mother and me, staring coldly for a few moments. In the most monotone voice I've ever heard from a 7-year-old, he told my mom, "They can only move in the dark. They keep getting closer. When I turn the light off, they can almost touch me now. Goodbye." My mom freaked, took all 3 of us to another room, shut and locked the door, and we slept with the light on. The next morning, I asked my brother what he saw. He again got a very dark look about him before explaining to me that children kept coming out of his closet, except they were darker than the darkest shadow, except for white lines that surrounded the outline of their forms. They had empty white eyes. Every time the light was off, they inched closer. When the light was on, they vanished. When the light turned back off, more descending from the closet and made their way to his bed, climbing up to the bunk bed and reaching for him, but leaving the youngest one alone and asleep. It freaked me out, but from here it only gets worse. This became a nightly occurrence, and both my brothers soon began asking for a chain lock on the closet door. My mother obliged so they could finally get some shut-eye. I started staying with them at night to help them sleep. The night the lock was placed on the door, we fell asleep with relaxed fears. Until the door violently slammed open as fast as the chain would allow, and I swear to God, All three of us saw small black hands clawing from the gap. This became almost nightly. It quickly evolved into whispering coming from the door of the closet, desperate pleads to, "Just let us out." My mom thought we had overreactive and gruesome imaginations. Maybe she was right. This continued for almost a year, and as suddenly as it began, it just stopped at the year mark. No sounds, no traces, nothing. We carried on with life. Other strange things would occur from time to time. Some scary, odd. As we grew older, we stayed in that house for 13 years. We moved, and I moved out of my mom's house. I got my own place, and by some stroke of absent-mindedness, moved into the house directly beside my childhood home. By now, I had forgotten all about the strange things of my childhood, and did not remember them until I was walking my dog one night close to 3 a.m. You see, I work until midnight, so I'm up all night. My brother's childhood bedroom window faces the backyard of my current home. I look up as my dog starts staring in the direction to find the light going on and off, methodically. Very slowly, I find it strange. It became a nightly occurrence on my walk to look up and see the light. I remembered the children from the closet. The strangest part for me is the family that moved into my old home is a single mother of 3 boys. Just like my family. And just like my family, the children were fairly close to the ages of 9, 7, and 5. After doing some research, I found that that particular house was built in 1980. It held a nice young family until 1987, when an electrical fire broke out. The family was a father who worked in the mines and was often away, a stay-at-home mom and her 3 boys, roughly 8, 6, and 4. When the fire broke out, the boys became trapped in their bedroom my brother slept in. The boys of the original family died of smoke inhalation. Only 2 of the 3 bodies were recovered. The mother made it out alive and later took her own life. The house lay in ruin for 2 years and was rebuilt in 1989. During that time, several strange deaths occurred. A husband and wife moved in with an infant daughter who died of SIDS 5 months after moving in. In 1991, a single man moved in and hung himself in the basement. In 1993, a large family of 6 containing a mother, father, 3 boys, and a daughter moved in. The daughter slit her wrist in the bathtub and died of blood loss. A year later, their oldest son shot himself in the basement. The house remained empty until 1997, when a widow and her daughter moved in. No incidences were recorded, and the family moved out in 1999, the year my brother was born. Families were in and out without incident until 2004, when my family moved in. We moved out in 2012. That was 9 true spooky stories. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel because here at Midnight Monster, we aim to deliver daily videos of the creepiest, most unexplained mysteries and just downright cold, blood-curdling stories that you've ever heard. So stick around if you dare.